Thank you very much for coming along this morning. I know you're all busy and we're really cranking into a very, very busy 2016. Great that you could take time out to come along this morning. We'll have you out of here by 11:30 and hopefully you will have time to have some input into this morning. It's not just about sitting here listening to me, although you're going to have to do that for a while. I'll talk probably for 30 minutes and then we'll open it up for discussion or contesting what I have said or whatever you like. I'm Peter Townsend, in case some of you I may not have met, and I really am grateful for such good support. This, I'm going to talk, this is on the public record. There's a lot of stuff going on that is sort of just under the surface, but I'm deliberately positioning what I'm talking about today so that it can be spread. And I think it is important that we spread the word. The genesis of this talk this morning came out of the fact that I give my team at the Canterbury Employers Chamber of Commerce a bit of an off-the-record update every couple of months, and they have found it quite interesting. And they said, well, why don't you talk to the wider membership about some of this stuff, because we need to pull some of this material together. So that's why you're here. This is the first one. If it works, we'll do it again. If it doesn't, my apologies. So what can we expect in 2016? Predictions, possibilities, and prognosis. What I want to do is I'm just look at the big picture first, look at the world, and then look at New Zealand, and then quickly boil that down to what is going on in the context of Greater Christchurch, the Canterbury economy, and Christchurch City rebuild. Then I'll throw up a few challenges and dispel a few myths, and we'll open it up for discussion. So please be prepared for the discussion end of it. The reason I want to talk about the world a little bit and the wider New Zealand economy is that it all fits together, obviously. The interdependencies between what we're doing here and what's going on around the rest of the world, really important. You probably heard on the news yesterday that Japan has issued their first 10-year bond at 0 interest. Interesting, never happened before. You can borrow money in Switzerland on a 10-year bond and pay for, you can deposit money and pay for the privilege. Never happened before. So the world is in a pretty volatile place. There are some different economic drivers occurring in the world now that will have application for New Zealand, and that sort of interest rate regime that is occurring worldwide now is a phenomenon that we've never experienced before, and it's going to be something that will play out over time. God knows where it all ends up, but it will have application for us. The situation in China is of concern, and I think we need to keep a close eye on China, now our biggest trading partner. We need to make, and of course our other big trading partner, Australia, very dependent on China, so we're going to have to keep an eye on what's going on in the Chinese economy. There's a bit of a shaking out going there, and we'll see what happens there. And there's a lot of other economies that are messy. European economies, the Japanese economy is sort of struggling a bit. You will have heard on the news in the last couple of days the big downturn in stock markets worldwide. Watch out, because that's just more instability and volatility going on. I'm personally quite concerned about what's happening in Europe with the refugee issues that are going on in Europe and the way that will play out. Hundreds of thousands of dislocated people, and of course the constant issue we have now with international terrorism and the application and the ramifications of that. So worldwide, uncertain, still okay, but uncertain. And the thing from my perspective is new territory. We're going into a lot of stuff that we have never been in before, and how does that play out? It's not just the old world yawning or sneezing, it's going somewhere new. From a New Zealand perspective, we had a presentation from the Governor of the Reserve Bank, Graham Wheeler, last week, who was very revealing actually about the prognosis for the New Zealand economy. Pretty good, despite what's going on around the rest of the world and despite what's happening with some of our commodities. The economy is strong and is expected to continue to be strong, and one of the particularly important issues that he relayed to us was the whole issue of migration and what that means to our economy into the future, with migration running at record levels, not only in this city but elsewhere. Interesting though, we're into an inflation rate regime now which is pretty much zero if you look at the headline inflation, and that includes the downturn in oil prices. Who would have thought, this time 5 years ago we were talking about peak oil. Now the world is awash with it, and it doesn't look like there's going to be any change to that situation in the foreseeable future. Even more interesting from a New Zealand perspective is is that we can expect inflation to stay down. Underlying inflation, if you take out the volatility of fuel prices and things, is about 1.5%, which is at the middle of the Governor's Reserve Bank band. He's clinging to that. He will probably say there's downside in interest rates rather than stability or upside in interest rates as we go forward. But who would have thought that we're an interest rate regime now where you've got interest rates where they are and no prospect of those interest rates going up anytime soon. The Reserve Bank is now projecting no change, no upside in interest rates in New Zealand through to the end of 2018, and that's just because they haven't forecast out further. So that's a completely new paradigm that we're operating in New Zealand. We all wonder why housing prices are going up in places like Wellington and Auckland and Central Otago and property prices going, very, very much. Well, think about it. People got a lot more equity in their existing homes because the underlying property values are going up. They can afford to borrow a lot more money because it's cheaper. There's no prospect of interest rates going up. So what do? What do? We'll go and buy another house somewhere. And you're going to see that continue. I don't see any change in that behaviour for some time yet. Exchange rates, a little bit of softening in the exchange rate. Quite a lot of softening has occurred in the exchange rate. Good for exporters, puts pressure on importers, but we're dealing with a very, very competitive import market. So you're not seeing that pressure coming through in terms of price increases on imports as you might have expected. Dairy is a worry because dairy prices continue to be lacklustre, and that's just a supply-demand situation. The world is awash with dairy, and New Zealand's a relatively, although we're one of the largest international traders of dairy products, we're a relatively small producer of dairy. So we get kicked around when the rest of the world is awash with dairy, and that is the situation at the moment. Lamb prices are down, similar situation, but oversupplied. Beef's pretty stable. But those fundamental commodities that drive our economy, more downside than upside. Overall, that has some impact, obviously, on the New Zealand economy. Key said yesterday there was a $17 billion hole in our projections as we go forward, but he still remains optimistic. Tourism is a really interesting one, though. Tourism, we're getting the reverse situation. We're getting a lot of people now coming to New Zealand in record numbers, particularly from the Asian markets and more particularly from the Chinese market. That's going to continue, there is no doubt about that. I get a little bit miffed because for many years the whole story of New Zealand tourism is sold on the beauty of the South Island, the offering that we have in the South Island. And there's been this recent propensity more and more for people to be trucked into or flown into Auckland, taken down to Rotorua, taken back to Auckland, say thank you very much for enjoying the New Zealand experience, see you later. We need to recapture that. We need to recapture the real reason why New Zealand's being sold to the international markets, and that's the South Island. And we need to make sure that we are doing that. I know there's all sorts of good work going on, and I'll come back to some of that in terms of growing our tourism capability and our tourism offering. I want to come back later on to the interdependence between what's happening in wider Canterbury and Christchurch, because it's very, very interesting to see how those interdependencies will play out in the future. We're rebuilding our city, we are accelerating the economic growth of our region, water's got a lot to do with that. How does that all play out long term for you in terms of your businesses and the business environment you're working in? But before I do that, I'll come straight to the Christchurch situation. The state of the rebuild, every day now we're hearing a good news story, and that's really interesting, isn't it? Seeing the media coming out with good news stories about the rebuild. Those good news stories are pretty much private sector orientated. Big investments going on by the private sector, particularly in the central city, but not only in the central city, in Greater Christchurch. And that's a fantastic thing to see, because we have been waiting some time to get some more certainty into what's happening, particularly with private sector behaviour. We all know, and some of us know better than others, that the potential for private sector investment has always been high, particularly in our central city, but we're starting to see it. Great to see the BNZ Centre occupied yesterday, and right in the heart of our central city, and that is just the beginning. I was interested in the Prime Minister's statement to Parliament yesterday, and because it's always interesting to listen to the Prime Minister, but he made specific reference to Christchurch right at the end of his speech, and some of you probably haven't heard it, so I'm going to read it. It's a paragraph. This year's budget will commit the last major tranche of funding to support the rebuilding of Christchurch after the destruction of the earthquakes in 2010-2011, as we move from recovery to regeneration. And of course, we're all talking regeneration now. The government's contribution to the rebuild is very significant, totalling around $17 billion, including payments made by the Earthquake Commission net of reinsurance proceeds. I like to think that the EQC money was ours because we paid the fee, the subs on it, but the government thinks it's theirs. That's all right. The total fee of 17 billion, total figure of $17 billion includes probably $8.5 billion of core government spending into our infrastructure and key projects. The focus is now on regenerating the economic and social life of the city as key projects are completed and the new Christchurch takes shape. This year will see a transition to greater local control as the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Authority is wound up. Serious functions have now been passed to other government departments and government has established 2 new organisations in its place. A new Crown company, Takaro Limited, has been established to oversee the development of the Central City anchor projects. Another organisation, Regeneration of Christchurch, will provide strong local leadership. It will have the ability to propose planning changes and to oversee long-term development of the Central City, Residential Red Zone and New Brighton. This year will see further progress made on the Central City anchor projects, the Convention Centre, interesting, Metro Sports Facility and residential developments in the East Frame. The Justice and Emergency Services Precinct will be completed this year. I think he's optimistic, I think it's 2017, but this year's good, which brings together all Justice and Emergency Services in one purpose-built precinct in Central Christchurch. The Skirt Horizontal Infrastructure Repair Program is also nearing completion. My understanding is that's due to complete by the end of this calendar year. So that's really interesting comment from the Prime Minister. The very clear message there that the government is passing responsibility back to local control over time, but not abdicating on its authority and its financial commitment to see the rebuild through. I'll come back a little bit to what is going on with some of those companies just shortly. Where are we at? I've been quoted as saying, and I believe it, that this year will be the year that we exceed 50% of the construction rebuild of our city. 50%. So we're 50% into it, and that's on a basis of a $33 billion construction calculation. The total rebuild in Christchurch will be $45 billion, but that includes land remediation and sorting out a whole lot of stuff that isn't construction. If you look at horizontal infrastructure, housing construction and commercial construction, and a total bill of about $33 billion in those 3 fields, we will be exceeding 50% this year. That's a really significant milestone. And remember, we have to remember always that for 2 years after the earthquakes, our Central City was pretty much locked down. So horizontal infrastructure had to go in, and now the building is taking place, and you can see and count the cranes for yourself. Worth just reflecting on some of the numbers. Housing, 25,000 houses with in excess of $100,000 worth of damage or destroyed. 168,000 houses with some form of damage or not, almost every house in Christchurch. Total housing damage, $14 billion, and we are about 55% through the housing repair thing. Got off to a pretty good start with Fletcher's EQR and their $3 billion contract to repair houses with under $100,000 worth of damage. But there's only $3 billion out of a total $14 billion worth of damage to our housing stock. And the really interesting thing from a housing perspective, the way I see it, is that there will be about 5,000 homes all up that will be managed through an insurance-managed repair or rebuild process. About 5,000 out of 25,000 of those seriously damaged homes. The other 20,000 will be cash settled. That have been cash settled or will be cash settled, 20,000 homes. That puts billions of dollars into the pockets of Christchurch homeowners who will do what they see fit with that money, and that's a really interesting phenomenon. My personal view is that some people will spend some of that money unwisely. If you consider a trip to Hawaii to be unwise, or a new motorbike. Some people will commit the money to rebuilding or replacing or repairing their homes, and some will do that better than others. Other people will commit much more than their payout to rebuild their home or repair their home, because if you're going to repair your home, you might as well put a new kitchen in, a new garage, and you can borrow money because you've got this cash payout that you can use to leverage with your bank. So I think that's all going to balance out. I think you can have a little bit of slippage, but I think you can have more investment at the other end of the scale. So that $14 billion figure is probably appropriate for housing stock rebuild. Commercial, total bill there on the commercial rebuild, the commercial buildings that were destroyed, and we probably forget that we lost 1,100 in our central city and another 500 outside the central city. 1,600 commercial buildings, a lot of buildings. Total cost there about $12.3 billion, 12.3. We're about 30% into the rebuild. And civil, the horizontal infrastructure, 55% of the way through that, and that includes some stuff outside skirt. Total cost there of $6.4 billion on civil reconstruction, of which skirt is about $3 billion. Also interesting to reflect where we will be when we have rebuilt 80% of our city. So this year, 50%, and the projections, if you look at when we will be 80% complete of the rebuild, housing, second quarter of 2017, so that's halfway through next year. Commercial, fourth quarter of 2018, long way out. And civil, second quarter of 2018, incomplete. So 80% through 2017, 2018. And that's really, really important, because I get really angry, as some of you probably know, when people talk about the rebuild of Christchurch having peaked and it's all downhill from here, and you know, you've really done whatever is going to be done in Christchurch, and you're now just carrying on as you used to. We're not even halfway through as I speak, and we have plateaued in terms of the rebuild at about a spend of $100 million a week. So we're spending $100 million a week rebuilding our city every week, and that's going to continue for the next 3 to 4 years, and that is unequivocal. So don't believe anyone who tells you the rebuild has peaked. The rebuild has plateaued. There's a big difference. And I got it to my most furious when I saw an economist purporting that by 2022 there'd be 20,000 people unemployed in our city because the rebuild would be long finished and there'd be nothing for them to do. That's just dangerous rubbish, and we just need to get rid of that. That won't happen. The Governor of the Reserve Bank, and it's not just me that says those figures, made statements last week that this year would be the year that we were 50% through the rebuild. I'm sure he didn't get that from me. He's got much better sources of information. And he also made the absolute statement that we were spending $100 million a week, every week, on the rebuild of Christchurch, and that will continue for some time. So these are real figures, and it's really frustrating when you get shonky economic analysis that says differently. And that's dangerous because it doesn't take a lot of people to start talking this place down for people to start believing in it. And if people start believing and talking it, that we're through the peak, then they make investment decisions accordingly, and the whole thing becomes self-fulfilling. So really important for all of us to stay positive and to stay realistic about what we're doing for the next 3, 4, 5 years. I want to talk a little bit now about some of the key projects. I just am really interested to know how many of you have seen this book. This book is called Ideas to Reality, Building a 21st Century City. How many, just raise your hand if you've seen it. 1, 2, yeah, okay. There's a problem. This is easily the best publication I have seen on the future of our city, and it's come out of Sarah. It is very gutsy, it's full of very good information, it's solid, it's well researched, and none of you have seen it, and that is a problem. Or 2 of you have seen it. So look, if you're interested, go up to the 8th floor of the HSBC building and get a copy, because they've got some sitting in there. You probably won't have tomorrow, but right now they've got some sitting in their bookshelf on the reception area, and that's where I got this one. And it is a very, very good document. And I just pulled a few bits and pieces out of this document to share with you on key projects, because I'm not going to go through them all, but there's some really interesting stuff going on. One of the things that we know about the key projects, and these are the government and council controlled projects, is that these were predicated on investing in these key projects so that it would give the private sector confidence to make its investment decisions into the city. Well, what's happened is the private sector has now run ahead of the key projects. So the private sector is actually making investment decisions in our central city in particular, but in the wider city as well, in a way that it puts the key projects into catch-up. And that's not bad, that's good, but we really do need to make sure now that these key projects deliver what the promise was, because the investment decisions that are being made in the central city are predicated on these key projects playing their part. So it's a very interesting sort of conundrum that's gone on there. Just before I go into the key project specifically, let me just expand a little bit on those companies that have been formed. Crown Co, which the Prime Minister announced yesterday, Takaro, which is the Avon River, name of the Avon River, Takaro Limited, will be 100% responsible for the government's key projects. So, convention centre, the other projects that the government is committed to and that the government is sharing with the City Council. Regeneration, and that's 100% government-owned company. Regeneration Christchurch is a 50-50 company with Ngāi Tahu having responsibility for appointment of one person in governance, an independent chair, but the rest being 50-50, 50% appointed by central government, 50% appointed by local government. Regeneration Christchurch, which is chaired by Andre Lovett. Is Andre here? I'm not sure. No. I can say if he's not here, he's a good man to do the job. And a really exciting challenge for him. But Regeneration Christchurch is going to be responsible for the big economic developments decisions about the city. So interacting with the community, making sure that you all have input as we go on, and looking at the destiny of the city from a broader perspective. Regeneration Christchurch 50-50, central government, local government, but over time intended that central government withdraw in staged way so that it becomes 100% locally owned company, Regeneration Christchurch. Crown Co will stay 100% owned by the government and get on with getting the key projects out of the way. Now these are both commercial boards, so it's not a ministry of government anymore. They're commercial boards that are being challenged to do their job. And then you've got Development Christchurch Limited, the third entity, which is going to be responsible for Christchurch City Council specific projects, so projects that the council is actively involved in that it needs to put into a commercial framework to make happen, and that again will be a commercial board. So the transfer from a ministry of government and from direct council control into these commercial entities has been quite deliberate. It is very much a sign of the times that it's time to put things into a commercial construct and to get the job done. And from my perspective, that's really, really important and really positive. And I've said that I think 2016, as we see this play out, 2016 will be the year that the optimists get payback. And I'm one of them. So I'm very optimistic about that structure. It's really going to be really important because there are three of them, Crown Co, Regeneration Christchurch, Development Christchurch Limited, that they work together, that they meet regularly, that they all know what's going on in terms of what each other are doing, and they've got very clear scope and very clear mandates. Key projects. Memorial Wall, you will have seen they've started the Memorial Wall, at least on one side of the river. It's a significant project and a very poignant project for the city. That will be officially dedicated in February 2017. So 1 year from now, we will be dedicating that wall. Bus interchange up and running, pretty efficient. I don't know how many of you used the bus exchange. I was there at the opening and Jerry Brownlee asked me where my Metro pass was. So I didn't have one, so I went and bought one. And I've actually used the buses. They are great. I mean, it works really well. It cost me $1 to go, $1.25 actually, to go from the central city to my home. And it takes 13 minutes, and I can have a drink before I get on the bus. So it's really, I think the whole public transport thing is very much a cultural thing. I think we just need to get over ourselves and appreciate the capability that exists with public transport in our city and start using it. It's good, and it's efficient. The Avon River Precinct, 4 years to go on that. You will have seen the beginnings of that. Interesting stat, there will be 100,000 plants planted in the river precinct on the way through over those 4 years. That's going to be a really special thing. We all said that we wanted the city to face the river. We wanted Christchurch to celebrate its river. I think the Avon River Precinct will enable us to do exactly that, and to link Hagley Park with the sea eventually, which will be a magnificent statement for our city. The Justice and Emergency Precinct, referenced in the Prime Minister's address, completion, he said 2016, I think probably 2017. 1,100 staff working in there at peak, only 32 car parks, so we've got to work that out. Particularly because 2,000 people will use that daily, they'll use that facility daily. Those of you that haven't been able to look at it, go and have a look. It's big, it's huge, but it's internally, it's got space and courtyards and passageways, and it's built for public access. So it isn't a big fortress, it is a part of our city, and it will be fantastic. 42,000 square metres of building, that's a lot of building. And completion, as I said, 2017. The Innovation Precinct, covering 3.6 hectares down by the Polytech. Vodafone, Kathmandu, Epic, and Wynyard have all made a commitment to that. You will see also Callaghan and New Zealand Trade Enterprise going back into the Innovation Precinct, or going into it. Those entities, at least Vodafone, Kathmandu, Wynyard and Epic, will all be on site this year. Really exciting. The Innovation Precinct took a long time to get cranked up, but now it's just going gangbusters. And I understand there is going to be space shortages already around and in the Innovation Precinct. So really, really exciting part of the recreation and regeneration of our city. The Health Precinct, which is a combined Canterbury District Health Board, University of Otago, University of Canterbury, CPIT undertaking, with various other research institutions and private enterprise involved as we go forward. Starting to take shape, needs a bit of a push along. It's difficult, it's complex, and but really, again, really exciting to get the combination of primary care, community care, medical research, education and training, and hospitality and accommodation all into that precinct. It'll be a wonderful facility when we get it cranked and get up. Retail precinct, well, you know what's going on there. I hope we're all going into the centre of the city now and watching what is going on. One of the things that I recall when we were at the bus interchange opening was Jerry Brownlee standing beside me, and he said, "Look, some people are saying there's nothing going on in the central city." And we're standing on the corner of Colombo and Litchfield Street. He said, "Look around." He said, "That building's going to be completed in October. This one's coming up by December. There's a crane over there that's putting a building up that'll be ready next March. And there's another 6 cranes in the background that are working on something over by Cathedral Square." It's amazing what's going on. I said, "It is." And we're starting to see it play out now. It's absolutely true that by the end, and someone in here can tell me I'm wrong, but absolutely true from my perspective that by the end of this year, that retail precinct will be well populated, up and running, with 4 or 5 new buildings completed. Of course, cornerstone by Valentine's, as it always has been, but that is going to be a really exciting place to be. High quality office accommodation, high street retail, fantastic offerings, new people coming to town, new retailers that we've never seen in Christchurch, making their statement right in the heart of our city. So we can be really excited about that, and it's a breath away. It's just the end of this year. And you're already seeing a pickup in activity in the central city by exponentially as it picks up. Yesterday we had hundreds of people occupying for the first time the BNZ Centre, which is one of Nick Hunt's projects, which is fantastic. So that's right in the heart of the city. Got to get the cathedral sorted and got to get the convention centre sorted, but man, there's some good stuff going on around that central city and the retail precinct. The convention centre, as I said, needs resolution. You keep hearing noises about that. Interesting to hear the Prime Minister, or read the Prime Minister's statement that this will be the year we get that sorted. It needs to be, it has to be. We can't afford for it not to be. So you can expect some good news coming out there in the relatively near future. Performing Arts Precinct, messy, complicated by this decision to retain the town hall and the ramifications of that for the Performing Arts Precinct. Good stuff will come out of it. The piano building is already underway. You will see the Isaac Theatre Royal, what a wonderful job that has been done on that institution. But it's not going to play out the way everyone thought it would when the first plans came through. It'll be different. It'll be good, but it'll be different. Central Library, expect 100 million visits a year to the Central Library when it's completed. 100 million? Sorry, 1 million. 1 million visits a year. Overstepped the mark as usual. But 1 million people going in and out of the library makes a huge difference. So, Margaret Mayhew Playground. Who would have thought? That was pretty visionary. Everyone thought, what the hell do you want a playground in the middle of the city for? Well, 100,000 people have visited the Margaret Mayhew Playground since it was opened late last year. And those of you, anyone here from New Regent Street, I'll guarantee your business has taken a major turn, because 100,000 people visiting Margaret Mayhew Playground is a lot of mums and dads with their kids, and what do they want after they've been to the playground? A nice cup of coffee or a sausage roll or something. Where do they go? Into the city. So we're seeing some really significant shifts in economic activity driven by that sort of thing. And of course, a lot of the kids that are going into the Margaret Mayhew Playground weren't born when we had our earthquakes. They've never been in the central city. They never knew what it was like. They don't know what's going on. So we're starting to see a whole new undertaking and a whole new generation connecting into the central city through that playground. And it's not finished yet. There's still some more work to do there. Same with the art gallery. Opened, fantastic, 100,000 people through it so far. If you haven't been, go and have a look. There's some beautiful offerings in the art gallery. Remember the role that played in the immediate post-earthquake environment. Remember all the work they've done to refurbish and stabilise the foundations in particular. 100,000 people. Metro Sports Facility, tricky one, projected to be open now in 2019. A lot of good detail in this book on that Metro Sports Facility, including the shape of the pools, and one of them has a bottom that can go up and down to make it shallower or deeper depending on the usage. Well, you should have a look at it. I'm not going into the detail, but really, really interesting. Stadium work in progress. The government has secured, I think, 75% of the 80% of the land they need for that stadium. But I think realistically we can't expect anything to happen anytime soon. If you look at the SERA projections, they keep extending the projection out as to when the stadium will be built in current form. There may be a surprise that comes out of the stadium. Someone could come along with a new big idea that will work as some sort of integrated offering, which includes a stadium, who knows. But nothing that I'm aware of at this stage. And then the work on the south frame and the east frame is continuing. Won't go into any detail. What we do need to watch out for and this is all, it's all upside, but what we do need to watch out for from my perspective is not so much the physical build of our city. I think we're starting to see some real evidence of some good outcomes there. What we need to be concerned of as a community is the psychosocial impact of the earthquake and the way that's still playing out. We're about 40% of the way through the mental ramifications of the earthquake. If you look at what happens internationally, it takes about 10 years for those mental issues to play out. The stress, the dysfunctionality, the violence, the crime, the health, perfectly normal. Our community, we need to stay on top of that. It's going to require some resourcing, it's going to require some extra resourcing, and we need to make sure that we manage stuck people through processes. And that's not always the people you expect. Quite often, from my perspective, and I do sit on the board of Pegasus Health, which is looking after a lot of the secondary care in our community, quite often it's people that don't know how to ask for help that need it, and mum and dad with a couple of kids that have never ever had to ask for help from anyone in the past are stuck, and they don't know where to go or what to do or how to ask for it. And we need, as a community, we need to be really conscious of that and make sure that we are looking after our people. So that's the sort of big picture for the Christchurch area, and I just want to touch briefly now on how that fits in with our region. I have a really simple sentence about the future of Canterbury, and that is how we apply technology to our natural capital on a platform of product integrity. Big sentence, but it just about sums it up, and that's where our future lies. And it's very interesting to see the Canterbury Regional Economic Development Strategy that's been delivered by the Mayoral Forum, which is the 10 mayors of Canterbury and the commissioners of, or the chair of Environment Canterbury, Dame Margaret Baisley, who's actually been driving it as chair of the Mayoral Forum. And that Mayoral Forum has involved Ngātahu, the Canterbury Development Corporation, our organisation, and the Committee for Canterbury in various consultation on the way through. But they've developed 7 interdependent work programs for the future of Canterbury. Freshwater management, integrated regional transport planning and infrastructural investment. Third one is a digital connectivity strategy. Fourth one, value-added production. Fifth one, education and training. Sixth one, newcomer and migrant settlement. And seventh is regional visitor strategy, tourism. So what they've done is they've charged each of the mayors with a responsibility to go away and develop a strategy in each of those areas. Some really exciting work going on. First time I've seen the whole of Canterbury working together, not before time, and also working in conjunction with the City Council to make sure that we're all talking about how we make this work, because of this interdependency between what happens in our city and what happens in our region. Fundamentally important. We are still very dependent on what happens in Canterbury. We're about 70% of our economy still driven by what happens in the wider Canterbury area. No point in rebuilding our city if we don't accelerate and sustainably accelerate the economic development of our region. And that it isn't about economic plundering, and it's not about environmental degradation. It's the opposite. Water is going to play a critical issue, and the water strategy that has been developed now and is being implemented is a really exciting part of our future. It's not just about how we harvest and farm water to increase productivity. It's also about how we ameliorate the environmental damage that's been done in the past, how we don't take so much water out of our ground through aquifer pumps, how we recharge our lowland rivers, how we clean up Lake Ellesmere, and that's all a very important part of an overall water strategy. So we've got plenty of water. My understanding is we use about 4% of the available fresh water in Canterbury. The rest of it drifts out to sea. we can use a lot more of it before it escapes to sea in a very sustainable, positively environmental way that will increase our economic productivity by billions of dollars per year. So that's just an example of one of those strategies that's being worked on through the Merrill Forum, and I applaud them for having a cohesive strategy. What we need to do as a city is the same. We need to develop agreed common objectives for the future of our city. What do we really aspire to as a city? And we've got a way to go there. There's another entity that's sitting around this whole area, which is the Urban Development Strategy, UDS. It's a grouping that encompasses Greater Christchurch, that's the Christchurch City Council, Environment Canterbury, the Waimak District Council, the Selwyn District Council, Ngāi Tahu, and they've also involved the New Zealand Transport Authority and the Canterbury District Health Board. I think you'll see more of the Urban Development Strategy as we go forward. It historically was a vehicle that was cranking up prior to the 2010 earthquake, did a lot of work on planning, a lot of work on infrastructure, a lot of work on transport, on where we should be putting housing in the future, but sort of got a bit sideswiped by the earthquakes, has developed the water strategy, has developed the land use recovery plan, and I think will raise its profile as we go forward. Just wanted to touch now on just a couple of, and I know I've talked long enough, but I just want to finish off with a couple of examples. Tourism in the South Island, I talked about the importance of that to the future. We need to make sure that we're well prepared for that. And that goes from start to finish, that making sure that we're utilising our fantastic international airport in an appropriate way, making sure that we've got wide-bodied jets connecting directly with overseas markets. Fantastic to see the commitment that Southern China Airlines, Emirates and Singapore Airlines continue to make to our airport and our community. It's really important because they carry a lot of people. It's also important because they carry a lot of freight. It's estimated that we have a about $42,000 air freight deficit out of our area because we don't have the wide-body aircraft capacity to carry freight. So that freight either doesn't go or it gets carted up to Auckland on truck and trailer units and then flying out of Auckland, which is a very suboptimal solution for us as we go into the future. So how we get that whole connectivity with the rest of the world through aircraft and indeed through the Port of Littleton is really, really important, and great to see Cash and Key open up the other day. Those sorts of pieces of infrastructure flow on then to making sure we've got accommodation offerings for our tourists. Most of them are going to be free independent travellers in the future. Most of them will be Chinese. We need to prepare for that. We need to make sure we've got the right signage, we've got the right attitudes, we're ready for it. And that's not just Christchurch. We need to capture as much as we can, but it's the whole of the South Island. How do we connect? Where's the interconnection between what happens from Christchurch International Airport to the ultimate destination of those tourists, and how do we make that work better together? And the whole of the South Island needs to be involved in that. We've got good electricity supply here. One of the things that's probably been very understated as we've come out of the earthquakes is the resilience of our electricity network, and that was done through Orion, our lines company, and the enormous investments they made prior to any earthquakes to future-proof and make resilient our electrical connectivity. I don't think there's any other centre in New Zealand that would have come out of our earthquakes as well as we did in terms of continuity of electricity supply. You know, if you sort of take that stuff for granted, we'd be a bit stuffed without electricity. I mentioned water. One of the things that I think is really interesting in the greater South Island context is the relationship between Christchurch and Queenstown Lakes. Not Queenstown Lakes. Queenstown, Arrowtown, Cromwell, Wanaka. It's going off down there. It's going gangbusters. There are more international trans-Tasman flights going into Queenstown at peak season than there are coming into Christchurch. I was down there over Christmas. They had a bad day in Christchurch in Queenstown on a Sunday. They had a storm, closed the airport. And the comment was made on the Saturday before they closed the airport. 17 trans-Tasman flights and 43 domestic flights used that airport. So that whole area is just going to keep going, and it's going to keep going in a way that none of us have anticipated, in my opinion. They've already got infrastructural problems in Queenstown. If you want to try and drive into Queenstown over Christmas, forget it. How do we deal with the interdependency between what happens in Christchurch and what happens in Queenstown? How do we make sure that we're working to the benefit of both of those communities? I predict within 20 years there'll be 2 commercial centres in the South Island, one more major commercial centres. One will be Christchurch, or Greater Christchurch, and the other one will be Queenstown Lakes. Not Queenstown, Queenstown Lakes. Watch that space. So, in summary, and I'll finish it, we can open up for some discussion. Myths, economic downturn, bullshit, forget about it. We didn't have an economic downturn. We came through this whole period in beautiful shape, considering what we've been through, and obviously well positioned to be involved in continuing to rebuild our city. Capital flight, bit, not much. Capital was designed to fly, as we've always said. It's where it lands that's important, and we're seeing capital land in Christchurch. That is underpinned by a great extent by the insurance payouts. So we all love to hate our insurance companies, but we were the best insured city ever to be struck by a disaster of the magnitude that was struck. The Reserve Bank will tell you that there's $36.8 billion worth of insurance proceeds being tipped into the city. I think it's a bit lower than that. My figure was 32, but I'll go for their figure, 36.8. That's an enormous sum of money in a $40 billion cost disaster, $45 billion rebuild, $40 billion cost, somewhere about $36 billion coming in insurance. That doesn't happen anywhere else in the rest of the world. And that has meant that a lot of the money, a lot of the insurance proceeds are being reinvested in the city. And you're seeing it. You're seeing the people that are making commitments to Central Christchurch, people that were in the city before and have gone back into the city. One of the reasons they've been able to do that is that they were well insured. So we should never underestimate that. It's a very significant, it'll never happen again. Insurance companies will never insure anywhere as well as we were insured in 2010, 2011. Times have changed. The other, just a couple of other myths that we're going to run out of work and run out of jobs on, just get rid of that. No one's coming back into the central city. Yes, they are. Don't believe that myth. And the one that I've mentioned already, that the rebuild has peaked. No, it hasn't. So 2016, as I said, will be the year the optimists get their payback. We're seeing some other really interesting stuff going on. I hope most of you are going to Night Noodle Market tonight, and for the next few nights. That's a really interesting, innovative development in our city. Penrith Panthers coming here in May, playing at the stadium. That's a long-term 4-year relationship between Sydney and Christchurch that will build not just on a game of league between the Warriors and the Panthers, but on creating a much stronger relationship between the two cities and coaching and all the other associated activity that we can be excited about. So that's it. I'd like to thank you all for your patience and listening to me. I'd like to really thank my team for getting this organised today. I'd like to welcome Militia Clough. Where are you, Militia? The newest staff member, Canterbury Employees Chamber of Commerce. She's just joined us to do HR. Where's the rest of my team? You can all stand up too, guys, just so that everyone knows who you are. We've got at the back and Leanne at the front. Just look, we have 30 people working assiduously at the Canterbury Employees Chamber of Commerce in very suboptimal accommodation. We're going back to our new property in Kilmore Street, which is our old property, which we have torn down, and we're building a new purpose-built building, and we will be occupying that on July the 22nd, 2016. The tilt slabs are going up as I speak, so we're really excited about that, but really, really grateful to have you interested in what we're doing. I haven't mentioned some of the stuff that we're fully occupied with at the moment, because I haven't got time, but one of them is health and safety. Remember the new legislation coming through. We've got now 3 permanent health and safety advisors who are flat out making sure that people like you are well prepared for that new legislation and the responsibilities associated with it. Just one example of a lot of good stuff going on in the Chamber. So thanks very much, thanks for your attention, and we do have 25 minutes for Q&A or challenges or different theories. Thank you.